Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of TBR. I'm George Binns, and the discussion this evening is about what's happening at the middle school. And to help understand it, we have with us tonight the Assistant Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Flaherty,
Good evening.
and the Principal of the middle school, Lisa Oliver.
Good evening.
And because I'm a bug on STEM, and that's what I want to get into later, we've got a STEM teacher, Ryan Oliver.
Good evening.
Ryan Hanlon. Wait, screw that up, but okay. This is amateur work week. Anyway, so there we are. And I guess the first question is, we've got a brand new school, or relatively new. So how's it working? Is it doing what you want it to do?
Good question. It's a beautiful building. We are very full right now.
Yeah.
But we have maker spaces. Ryan is in a maker space for his STEM class. We have 3 on every floor. They are all being used for different reasons, but many of them are STEM classrooms. We're doing some work much like this. We do have a studio at the middle school, and
Yep.
we have some teachers that really have shown an interest in that, and they're utilizing that space.
Yep.
We have 2 cafeterias. We're trying to make the school feel smaller in terms of community, even though it's such a large building. So we're utilizing both cafeterias during each lunch that we have. Overall, it's going really well.
Yeah.
I think one of the added benefits, the pluses and minuses for having a middle school so large. We're all middle school people here.
Yeah.
And that's where I spent my career before I became the assistant superintendent. And one of the things middle school kids love to do is act and do project-based learning, and we're very fortunate with the size of the auditorium that we have. A lot of middle schools don't have that access, so that's also another benefit of the new building.
And also, there are a lot of interesting STEM projects that are happening at the middle school. There, as Ms. Oliver said, that there are maker spaces where there's coding happening. There's also robotics and 3D printing and 3D modeling, and the students are able to work in those maker spaces, but also they spill out into different spaces at the middle school, and sometimes they use the green rooms, and
What's a green room?
they're where they're able to create digital media and film their
TV studio.
Yeah.
yeah, TV
okay,
studio.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
able to film their own projects.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, if we had it to do over again, what should we do different? What's the lessons learned from this?
well, I think there's a lot of ways that the students and teachers adapt on a daily basis. I think that just as a teacher, we are engaging in personalized learning, and so every student has different needs. And so I think that with that in mind, there is technology that we can always enhance and change as the culture changes with students' needs. So personally, as a teacher, the way that I engage my classroom is that I take each student where they are at, and I realize that student A may want to work with this 3D printing technology, and another student may want to work with robotics, but there are some technologies that we just don't have because the school is constantly evolving with what's happening now, and so there's always room for change and
What
to
kind of
adapt.
technologies would you like to add?
I think that there's students right now are very interested in 3D printing, and that definitely helps with understanding math comprehension and science comprehension, because they can definitely tap into they can see where they make mistakes, and they can change their thinking very quickly, and they feel more confident about making mistakes, which is an important life skill.
Yeah. And engineering is very simple. You can make it and break it and make it and break it. When it stops breaking, you throw the drawings over the wall, and we make a bunch of them and sell them.
Right.
And that design thinking starts all the way back in kindergarten.
Yeah.
That goes through the through line K to 12. So,
Yes.
but I think back to your question about the middle school, as I walk through, I think a lot of things were done very well as far as the design of the building and making each quarter its own team, so that they were trying to make schools seem a little smaller for kids. I think that one downsize is when you put 1,400 middle school students in one space, that lends to a lot of excitement and a lot of challenges too. So
Yeah.
overall, I think that the school, although they're trying very hard to make it smaller, still has, with adults and kids, 1,600 people in one place
Yeah.
at a time, and that leads to some challenges. So I think thinking about whether one school or two schools would have been better is probably one option, but then you wouldn't also have some of if you did it in smaller building, different buildings, you wouldn't have some of the bigger spaces like the auditorium and community
The
gym.
common spaces
and,
get to be,
yeah, and so
cramped.
there's trade-offs
Yeah.
between the two. So I think they're doing a good job. I think Lisa can talk about the sixth grade. They're trying to pilot a house system, and so it's a way of trying to build smaller communities within larger ones.
what do you mean by a house system?
Yeah, so the house system comes from the Ron Clark Academy in Atlanta, Georgia. Had the privilege of visiting there a couple of times, and we have some other administrators and teachers that have visited there. But the house system is about creating smaller communities across the grade levels, and it's a way to build that community. It's a way to have the students engaged in something that's exciting and fun, so they do competitions with one another. There's actually an app that goes along with the house system where we're tracking student behavior in a positive way.
It's like giving them their own sense of identity.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's 4 houses. Right now it's only in grade 6, but our hope is to expand that across the
Well,
building.
the way the school is set up, grade 6 is on their own floor.
Yes,
You've got 3 wings,
3 wings, correct.
and how do you divide that up into 4 houses?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it is random. So you could be in a house, and each house has people from across all 3 neighborhoods.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So eventually it will be a house. For example, one house is called the House of Isabindi. That's the House of Courage. Eventually we'll have students that are in that house from grades 5 through 8. But we're not there yet. We're
Okay.
just piloting it.
So
in
you're going to
grade
have the
6.
houses going, stacking vertically,
Yeah.
and the grades are spread out horizontally.
Yeah.
Okay. So a house can have 5 to
5
6,
through 8
7, yeah.
students. Yep.
Yeah.
And we're
So
utilizing.
what's the idea behind the house? What's the house supposed to do?
The house is supposed to build friendships across the grade levels. It's supposed to focus in on some of those social emotional skills or social skills in general that we want kids to have. It's giving students an opportunity to practice collaboration and cooperation. A big piece of the house system, like I said, is some competition within. So
Some
sixth
fun.
grade
So they
fun
can have some fun.
Yeah.
they had a dance off in grade 6, and part of what we're teaching kids is, although you're being competitive, you're encouraging one another, and
Yeah.
if you don't win the dance competition, you're celebrating your peers that did, for example.
So you're not one of 1,400. You're one
Right.
of a smaller number.
Yeah.
And this sort of this breaks into the enthusiasm that happens in STEM as well, because that is contagious within the STEM classroom, this sort of enthusiasm, but also rooting each other on, and and the social emotional learning goals. Students want to support each other, but that house structure gives it actually a way for it to happen, and especially in projects.
So basically, the architecture of the building integrates horizontally within a grade,
Yeah.
and what you're doing is fighting that system by integrating vertically.
A little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
I would say blending it,
Yeah.
because you still are part of a team, and that's your hallway, right?
Yeah.
So I know they just changed all the names, right?
Yeah.
Instead of Bulge, what is it?
Oh, no, it still is.
Is it?
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
you're a member of the Bulge team,
Yeah.
but then you're also a member of your house team.
Okay.
And then that long term should carry right up into the high school, right? And then when you get to the high school, you're no longer in specific rows or corridors of classes. You could be in a class with sophomore, junior, and senior students, and now you're going to walk into that room as a freshman and know other people within the room. So it should
Yeah.
help to create a better culture and
Get
welcoming
used to
culture
dealing
at the
with
high
other
school.
people
Yep.
of
Yeah.
different ages and grades and all that. Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. You got it from Georgia, no less.
We did. Atlanta,
surprising.
Georgia, yeah.
The other thing that came out of the tours we took on the building commission was that because of the spread in ages, 5 through 8, there got to be some concerns with a lot of the parents that they really didn't want their 5th graders on the bus with the 8th graders, because that's really the only time that they're all together.
Mm-hmm.
And are we seeing any of that at all?
No.
No, I
And
don't
what-
think
There's always an occasional thing here or there,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
for the most part, I like that progression because it allows you to see students really grow and change and mature over time. And then it also will allow you to do some work with 8th grade and 5th graders, buddying up, being reading buddies, that kind of stuff. But really developmentally, that 5th grade is the real transition year, right? We still want to provide some structure that's somewhat elementary so that they feel supported, but they're also ready for some bigger and more freedom and more ready to be at middle school.
I think also that middle schoolers, especially the upper middle schoolers, are looking to be mentors to lower middle schoolers, and this house structure will be a good opportunity for them to do that. And especially if they're in those house structures, they will, within their global application classes like STEM or art, they are able to show lower middle school students, hey, this is what my experience was, and these are things that I enjoyed, and these are things that you might enjoy, and what better way for that experience to travel than through the grapevine, and those conversations happen outside of just school. So
And we have to get to the other serious question. I've been picking up some buzz at the Y. There's a concern about a little bit of bullying going on. And I guess this is realistic in all schools. How do you handle it?
Well, we handle it multiple ways. So we're trying to be proactive. So we're practicing, again, not to keep talking about the house system, but that is one way that we're beginning to address it. Again, it's only in 6th grade. But we have peer leaders within the building. We're doing presentations from assistant principals to whole grade levels around standing up for one another, supporting one another, all of those skills combined. In addition to that, in terms of discipline, we're really looking at restorative practices. In 5th and 6th grade, we have a responsive classroom model, which is, again, teaching those skills that students need. But in terms of bullying
Well,
particularly...
what kind of skills you're teaching them? I know, in this
Well-
responsive model.
Yeah, we're teaching them how to get along with one another. So we're putting structures in place where they can practice that, right? How to greet one another in the morning. And this is happening at the elementary level, but still needed at the middle school level. So we're doing a lot of that.
There's teaching skills around if you're angry or depending on what your feeling is, how how you can handle that in a more productive manner. So if somebody makes you angry, instead of, bullying or,
Yep.
striking
Alternative
out or
thoughts.
yelling or swearing or whatever, how do you handle that in a more productive manner? And that's really, we use the CASTLE framework, which is around social emotional learning. And one of the things we're seeing is that we do still need to teach very specific skills that students may have had at the elementary school, but right now when you think about the pandemic and what we've been through for 2 years, there's a lot of social skills that students would have normally learned at a younger age that we now still have to implicitly teach once they get to middle school.
Yeah.
What else do you feel has been residuals from the pandemic? That how much learning did they lose? How much of a challenge is it to get them back on track?
I think that's one of the areas that we've done a lot of work on, and DESE has been, Department of Ed, has been very supportive in giving us guidance as well as funding in order to do that. We've been able to make some smaller class sizes at the elementary school. We've been able to do summer boost camps last summer, which we plan to do some again this year, so that we can target students that may need that extra support. But we really focused on what we called acceleration of learning, which meant we didn't go back and reteach the whole previous year because kids were in school, right?
Yeah.
Whether they were remote or they were in person or a hybrid model. And so teachers are using a lot more data so that they can understand what students are, what they know and are able to do and where they might need to have some extra support. We put in a new math program that allows us to have an online, it's called Alex, it's an online, almost like a tutorial, so that students can go on and work independently in their own path as to where they need to either stretch or need a little bit of extra support.
Personalized learning.
And
Personalized
in STEM classes, we've been focusing a lot on engagement. Like we really have been pushing hard to make sure the students are engaged, but also how do they work as teams.
What do you mean by engagement?
We want to make sure that the students are really interested in learning. They're not just passively participating in a project. What they're doing is something that they're passionate about, so that learning is happening at a high level. They're creating things, they're modeling things, and these are things that they're interested in. And but they're also working in a group, and the group is working as a functional team. It's usually we try it as a small team. It's not a large group, and so. The students know how to work as a team, but they're also doing it in a very collaborative way, and that's
They have
something.
to be a contributing member to the team. They just can't stand there and watch it happen.
Correct.
And Sammy do it. He does a nice
Yep.
job of doing that.
Yeah.
And that's a skill that students sort of lost, and so that comes back into play now that we're back in school, especially in a project-based learning situation, which is
You have to
STEM.
teach all of those roles that
Yeah.
you would do in a group. So you can't just put 4 kids together and say, go at it. You need to teach who's the leader, who's the recorder, who's going to be the timekeeper, who's going to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to have a voice when they're talking. And then how do we come to an agreement about what we want our project or our problem to be?
Yeah. And that's not happening just in STEM. It's happening
Across the
across the
Yeah,
board,
it
across
is.
the grade levels.
Universal.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So.
And I guess the other concern that came out of some of these discussions was when you have a large spread of kids in age and size, you also get a significant size difference. I remember at one time I was teaching, not
There
teaching,
definitely
I was
is.
coaching a under 11 soccer team, and I had some kids that were only about
Yep.
this high,
Yeah.
and yet
Then
some
you
of
get
them
your
were as
8th
big
grade
as you.
boys.
You know?
Yeah.
I was looking
Yeah.
up to them, and it got to be a physical conflict between them, and some kids got intimidated, and I guess that's one of the issues that you have when you get that many different ages and sizes in one building.
Yeah.
I think you have to be purposeful planning for that, but I also think that that's one of the exciting parts about being in middle school because you see such a change physically, maturity level wise. You welcome them in as young children still, and they're leaving as young adolescents.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're having fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's working. Yeah.
Being a middle school teacher is a wonderful experience. Every day is a different experience, and every year is a different experience, and I wouldn't trade it in for anything.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the whole process of what are you going to teach this year, especially in STEM, keeps moving. And I guess it gets down to the question of what are you teaching in STEM? Because I remember way back when there used to be 8th grade was physical science, 7th grade was life science, 6th grade was earth science.
Now it's combined. All 3 years have a strand for each of those, and then also a STEM strand, an engineering and technology strand.
Yeah, how do you start to get all this stuff floated into a class? Science, technology, engineering, math, there's a lot of stuff in there. And how do you come up with a program that says we're going to do a little science, a little engineering, we're going to do a little math?
Well, we have science teachers on team, so they handle the 3: life science, physical science, earth science, and then we have our STEM teachers that focus, not solely, but focus on the engineering and technology strands.
Right. And from my perspective is that I feel that there's a lot to be learned from each other. The math and science teachers, they are delivering a lot of knowledge to those students, and the STEM is a sort of an arena to really deliver opportunities to practice those experiences.
So you have a specific science class for each one of the grades
Correct.
Yes.
In a math class.
and a math class. And then STEM integrates all of that, that's a separate class?
It is.
Yes.
And then you have English and
Social
social
studies.
studies and all that.
Yeah,
That's a lot of stuff to get in, isn't it?
it is. It's a busy day.
Yes. And the hours of the day haven't gotten any longer.
Unfortunately.
So I guess the question is, how do you integrate all of this stuff as STEM?
Well,
You got a kid that, I don't know, take a 6th grader, what does he get for science class?
6th grade science. I'm
Combination.
Yep. Well, I
Combinations.
wanted to actually, hopefully we'll have enough time, and if not, I think we're going to meet again so we can talk about this, because
Yeah.
this is something we send home to parents as well. And this right here, this big blue book, is what the science standards are from kindergarten through 12th grade.
Yeah.
So there isn't a family that's going to sit down and read through this,
No.
right? And so I think one of the things that the Department of Ed did, and we actually send home to all parents, as well as they're available on the website, is they took what was in here and really boiled it down into a one-page document for parents. And it gives them the focus areas for 6th grade. So for an example, this one is a lot around rock layers and fossil layers. So they're doing a lot of earth science in 6th grade. They're looking at systems and understanding the different way different systems work. So they do a lot of body systems. And then by the bottom piece of this, it gives them 7 or 8 bullets about what your 6th graders should know and be able to do by the time they leave 6th grade.
Yeah.
So it takes all the technical language and makes it very understandable. And then it also gives them some suggestions that parents can ask their teachers, so that they can have a conversation with their teachers, but also some good questions to ask their students when they come home, so that they can engage them in a conversation about their learning.
I think an opportunity that we haven't capitalized on enough yet is really having time in our PLCs of having math, science, and STEM teachers meeting together. Right now they're meeting more in silos, and we're trying to get them to come together to work through all of the standards more proficiently.
Yeah, I think there's opportunities for collaboration, and how do math and science and STEM all work out different projects that could be more dynamic for all the teams.
Well, it's starting to sound like STEM is like what used to be the old shop classes, where you go and do some hands-on learning kind of thing?
Well, STEM has multiple real-world applications. Like there's robotics and 3D printing,
Yeah.
and there is a shop class, but and math and science are part of shop, but shop is what we call tech ed now, is just one discipline, but there's so many different other ways that you can interpret math and science than just shop. So you could take a shop class and say this math or science teacher could come into a shop class and say, hey, we're learning this in our math class and science class. Let's bring some of those elements back into one class or the other. And or they could do the same thing in their robotics class. And so there's so many opportunities to take learnings from whatever they're learning in STEM, whether it's tech ed or robotics or 3D printing, and then talk about those in science and math class or vice versa.
Vice versa. You know, we started the show talking about design builds and design thinking, and so one of the things throughout, and it will increase as you go through the grades, is really getting students to think about problem solving, design, and redoing. But they also then need to be able to analyze data. They need to be able to graph and do scale drawings. And so that definitely integrates the math in with what's happening in science class and in STEM.
So I think this gets to be a rather large discussion that we need to have about, I'm still a little fuzzy as to how you put all this together. It starts off with, I'm used to the old system of defined classes in a subject for the whole year. And now you're telling me you're sort of mixing them in together.
That's the exciting part about learning today, right? It's more integrating classes so that you're not, I got 45 minutes of English, I have 45 minutes of social studies, I have 45 minutes of science. Oh, today I also have my STEM class. But it's really, how do you take skills that you're learning in each of these and then integrate them together to problem solve, to think deeply, to work collaboratively. So they're learning skills through our subjects that will carry them into high school, college, and workforce.
Yeah. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I guess we've reached our half hour. Excuse me. And like you said, we'll have to do this again, so stay tuned.